Good tuna, but I think I paid too much.
I always wear my mask and wash my hands after going home.
I am the king of the ring.
Welcome to the Japan What Podcast, episode 211. And I'm your host, Matthew, PMBigelow.com. And I'm coming at you from the Aizumicho Studios in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. The armpit of Asia. Covering Japan Society 5.0, AI market trends, the supply chain wars, depopulation, migration, and rising conflict in the Indo-Pacific. We thank you for coming along the adventure that is today's show. Busy day as usual. I know that things getting busy out there already. May, moving into mid-May 2025. Time just keeps on marching on, as it does. The old insights on the Japan What Podcast today. The time marches on, and there'll be good points in your life, but, you know, there also might be some parts that aren't so good. All right. That's just my what I've learned along the way here. All right. Well, we do have a lot of stuff to do today, so we're just gonna kick right into it here. Got too much prepared here. Now, one of the great things of running a podcast is the weird kind of spam mail you get, and it's always from some sort of aggregator. Sometimes it's people like saying, "Hey, want to take your podcast to the next level? Just give all your data to us. I am Minjabwe." Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know about that. And then other ones involve, I don't know, just oh, hey, why don't you get this theater director from Croatia on your podcast? Like, how does this get in my box here? My box. And the other day was no exception. So I opened it up, and it's from this podcast promoter thing, and it says, "Congratulations. When listeners search for medical bureaucracy on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Japan What Podcast appears at result 13. Who searches for medical bureaucracy in podcasts? 13 people? Am I at the bottom of the list? But did you also know you are number 16 for transitional space? Actually, I'm a big fan of being aware of transitional spaces. I don't really say it that much on the podcast, but maybe there's some sort of transcript that's out there that got into the aggregators, the transitional space aggregators out there in the internet. And I'm number 17 for Yokohama City. Yay me, everybody. Yay podcast. I would just like to thank the listeners for bringing us here, because without you guys, none of this would be possible.
High.
Are these people high or not high?
Or not high?
Who would send emails out telling me that I'm number 13 for medical bureaucracy? It's got to be some sort of hooey. More knowledge. This just might be hooey, because I don't know about you, but I don't think there's that many people searching for medical bureaucracy in the podcast feeds. Have you ever even typed the word bureaucracy in your entire life? How many times have you sat down at a computer and typed in the words bureaucracy without having to look it up in a dictionary? It just rolled off your fingers. How many times have you sat down to write a letter and you're like, oh yeah, got to write out that word bureaucracy. Now combine that with the word medical. How many times have you even thought about the collocation of medical bureaucracy? And then how many times have you written that out? Well, things are kind of hard these days. Sometimes they're easy. Sometimes they're hard. When they're hard, I like to search for medical bureaucracy in the podcast RSS feed catchers. So anyways, that's that. Let's take a look at the supply chain war for today. Die for the war, everybody move. Die for the good, die for the war, die for the war. Now, as Michael Yon, war correspondent Michael Yon, who's been on the podcast twice, has said many times, because I listen to him when I can, and I haven't applied it to the supply chain war, but it just dawned on me that it makes perfect sense. Now, when he is asked about war, he will say, war will go in the following ways. War expands in ways that you wouldn't have thought, and war goes on for longer than you think it will. Now, he doesn't say it like that. He says it he says it the Michael Yon way. And I said it the Japan What podcast way. And that's kind of what's happening with the supply chain war. It's the American mothership has entered the chat and has lit everything on fire. I've been covering the supply chain war for years now, and it almost felt like a fringe topic. And I was even wondering why I was covering it, because frankly, it's not something I ever imagined myself that I would be covering. But over the years, as the podcast has evolved into what it has, I just decided to follow the trends where they're leading me and study the trends so that I'm not caught flat-footed when the trends explode. Because during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, I was kind of with it, but it was ahead of me, and then I was caught flat-footed, and I lost a lot. So I don't want to lose a lot again. So that's why I kind of say, well, a few years ago, it's like, why are all these chips for these cars? What's with Wuhan? Why is Wuhan a bottleneck in the global supply chain system? And what's with the components being released here, not over there? Why are these shipping containers? I just kind of went down the global supply chain rabbit hole and came up with the idea that we're in a supply chain war. And before it was easier to define because there wasn't so much news about it. But now that the Americans have entered into it full-heartedly with economic tariffs and negotiations and, the whole bevy of things that have been going on, it's blown out of proportion as to what I would normally be able to carry it. But some of the tenets or some of the basic principles of the supply chain war is that there's basically two sides. There's the BRICS side, and then there's the G7 side. The G7 side likes to promote itself as a free-loving democracy of like-minded countries trading with each other and promoting democracy worldwide in the post-World War II international rules-based order, otherwise known as the New World Order. And then there's this new system that's popped up called BRICS, and they don't care who you are. They'll just trade with you. And they're just focused on trade, but also circumnavigating eventually the U.S. dollar so that they are able to empower their own sovereign nations, decide where their money goes without having a middleman like the American dollar constantly getting in the way of them trading. And then with the weaponization of the U.S. dollar, with the sanctions on Russia recently, the freezing of Russian assets and using the interest of Russian assets to give Ukraine money to buy weapons to blow up Russia, a lot of people see themselves caught up in this system in the future and are now trying to get around it as well. But it's not only that, it's about energy. The Nord Stream was blown up. It was delivering cheap Russian gas to Germany, and it blowed up. And now Germany has to buy very expensive gas from the Americas when it's liquefied, so it has to be put into ships and sent across the ocean, all these things. And it's also, it goes into where do you get your weapons components from, right? Can America launch a full trade war against China if America's military relies on components made within China? And as you can see, it kind of expands out from there. And it's almost needs like a new word or a new terminology, because I say it now and I compile the information for it, and it's like, okay, it's a blob. So today we got a blob of supply chain war for you. But I've divided it up into sections, and it should make sense. Now, Japan is very limited in what it can do because it's essentially under the U.S. wing, and it likes to be under the U.S. wing from a defensive posture because it has no official army, because the Americans took it away from Japan after World War II and a newly written constitution. So Japan likes to focus on trade. But one thing that Japan can do is shore up its defenses. And like I said, this is not just about who blows up who, but it's who trades with who. And cyber is going to be a major part of this because on the part of the Chinese, and I say this a lot, but it's just some people tune in not all the time, so I do repeat it, but it's for the good of everyone. China has this new idea of using its QR code-based payment systems to connect, for example, African consumers with Beijing residents, and the Beijing residents can place orders with the African farmers or coffee bean farmers, whatever it is. And then China has this whole network of ships that can be piloted via AI and satellites to Africa. And also the Chinese government on those same ships can do deals with foreign governments for mass amounts of resources. So it creates a consumer trade network and a resource-based trade network, and it uses Chinese digital RMB for trade, totally circumnavigating, or whatever you want to say, totally avoiding the usage of the US dollar instead of competing against it. The people who Beijing would like to trade with would be forced into adopting a digital RMB to do business with them. So it's not just about who gets to blow up who, it's about who gets to trade who. Like, we can always say things like the American Navy protects the supply chains. So without the American Navy, traditionally the New World Order would not be able to conduct trade in the high seas as it had normally been able to do. And we see disruptions like with the Houthis or with Ukraine and Russia, the war there, with disruptions to grain and potash and tobacco potentially, with Gaza and Israel. There's a mining there. There's also the Suez Canal. The list goes on. So it's not just, we can't look at it myopically. It's not like one headline and then we move on with the day. It's a giant hamburger of layered applications within a very difficult to understand system. So in this first part, we're going to look at Japan shoring up. Japan's KDDI and NEC. So NEC is basically a tech company and KDDI is a telecommunications company. So, big tech with big tech, essentially, to partner on supply chain, infrastructure, cybersecurity. This is coming to us from the Nikkei.com, and I don't pay for the subscription, so it's just going to be a couple of paragraphs here, but it indicates where Japan is positioning itself in this growing supply chain war, because Japan is, like I said, ideologically aligned with the G7, but it's geographically festooned on the maritime borders on the edge of the American empire between China, Russia, North Korea, and then Japan with South Korea there. And South Korea, North Korea, we don't know what's going on there either internally, right? If you've been following South Korean politics, they might be having a very pro-North Korean contingent taking over large swaths of the country down there. And if they get a hold of that infrastructure and hand it over to the North Koreans, who knows, right? So I don't think most South Koreans would like that, but there's been instances of communists taking over with small numbers in the past. So anyways, Japan's cybersecurity field is dominated by NTT, which provides a nearly full range of services. But rival KDDI hopes to find a path to growth overseas by partnering with NEC. So I can't go into more than that because I need to subscribe, and I'm not going to, because Asia, Nikkei.com is a mouthpiece of the New World Order, and I don't want to give them my money. And it's not like it's very informative. What would I extrapolate? It says KDDI is a rival of Nippon Telegraph, NTT, Nippon Telegraph and Telephone. But I think KDDI was originally spun out of NTT to create like a fake competitive environment. And then SoftBank is the other telecommunications company. And that's where I worked for 5 years, from 2015 to 2020. It's already been 5 years since I left. But we can see that... What did it say? Crucial infrastructure and supply chains. Okay, so next one. Setting the table here. Again, from the Nikkei Asia, Japan back-end chip companies form alliance to upgrade supply chain. So Japan is bolstering its shores, bolstering its companies. More than 20 Japanese companies involved in back-end semiconductor manufacturing will join forces on production and material supply to strengthen domestic supply chains. The Alliance of Outsourced Semiconductor Assembly and Test, or OSAT, providers will hold an inaugural meeting on April 21st in Tokyo, so it was already a couple weeks ago now. Amkor Technology Japan and Aoi Electronics are among the companies taking part. So they are also looking at bolstering Japan's position in the supply chain war by strengthening its existing systems. And the next one, which is also from the Nikkei, it says Japan to add undersea cables and satellites to critical supplies list. And the critical supplies list is basically stuff that's considered critical to the operations of a country. So if you're on this list and you're making stuff for the country within this list, the idea is that you'll get fast-tracked, extra funding, and promoted to bring your products to delivery. So it's, again, just a couple of paragraphs, but it says Japan will add undersea cables, satellites, and rockets to a list of goods considered critical for the country's economic security, Nikkei has learned, along with several other items exposed to shocks in overseas sourcing. The Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry intends to present a proposal at an experts meeting opening Thursday. Well, this is already a couple of weeks old, but I hadn't covered it and I hadn't seen it. But when I found these three articles together, I was kind of thinking, well, that's thematic, isn't it? And, of course, the undersea cables connect most of the internet traffic together. It's not done by satellite. Satellite has latency issues. And for all the information that's required to go through the internet or the international, international data providers, satellites just aren't cutting it these days, so we still rely on undersea cables. And China has patented an anchor for a ship designed to cut undersea cables. So the idea that you can just rely on the existing undersea cables while China has this interesting disruptive stack of technologies that it uses, what it does is it ostensibly has a ship, like a 30-ton ship on top of the water, and it looks like a rust bucket. But it has this new patented anchor that it drags behind it. And this anchor is equipped with all these blades and hooks and stuff like that. And it's designed to cut undersea cables. It's like a patent. I covered it a couple of months ago now. But that's, of course, you can't just take an old ship with a big old anchor and start dragging it around the ocean and hope for the best. So to help with the search and destruction, allegedly, or ostensibly, of these undersea cables, China has these underwater drones equipped with scanning technology, and they go underwater and they kind of know where these cables are roughly. And with the scanning technology, they locate the undersea cables and transmit that data probably up into a buoy somewhere, which can then relay that information either to the ship or to a low Earth satellite, which then beams it down to the ship. So it's controlled by the CCP somewhere. Or maybe it's just turned loose and they have their instructions so that there's this, plausible deniability. And then the old rust bucket ship just starts following orders from this drone equipped with AI scanners, and it drags behind the undersea cable, and it just goes back and forth over the location data until snippety snip, some people's computers go down and everybody wonders what happened. So Japan needs to bolster these existing infrastructures because they are at risk. And that's that. Now, these are all practical. Like, we can look at these moves and kind of go, oh, yeah, about time. I mean, maybe 30 years ago to do so would be a little insane because they're already new. It's like buying a new car, and then 1 week later you go and you get a new paint job for the car. You'd be like, well, why'd you do that? And you're like, well, it would be just like a waste of money. But after a few years, maybe you went through the desert and now you have some extra money. You go, you know what? I like that car. I'm going to get it a new paint job. And you go and get a new paint job and everybody says, wow, nice. So we're kind of reaching that stage perhaps with the existing infrastructure that we have. It needs an update. But Japan has this other side to it, where it's so into the SDGs. And in my opinion, if these are luxury items. If you made like $3 million last year in crypto and you managed to hide it so you didn't have to pay taxes, and you're living in a safe neighborhood in a good house, and you kind of go, you know what? I want to get a Maserati. And you just go down and you get a Maserati. Okay, sure. But if you're being bombed and there's like blowing up, buildings are exploding, and you still have the money, but you probably wouldn't go and get the Maserati. So with the SDGs, in my opinion, it's like buying a Maserati. You know, if times are good, why not? If you have the means and the finances and the peace and the stability to go around doing SDGs. These are like UN things like stopping poverty and making sure everybody eats and, you know, no more pollution, like these kind of dreamy, girly things, very feminine. But Japan is also like really into it. Again, this is all from the Nikkei. Japan to ship CO2 emissions to Malaysia for storage underground. Now, I read this and I go, what? Planet-warming pollutant would be liquefied and taken to depleted gas fields. This makes no sense to me. Japan and Malaysia are closing in on an agreement to cooperate on the underground storage of carbon dioxide, in a plan that would take the greenhouse gas produced in Japan and transport it in liquefied form to the Southeast Asian nation for storage, starting as early as 2030. Again, 2030 is a big UN day year. Parties including the trading house Mitsui & Co. and Japanese compatriot Kansai Electric Power are working on the project with state-run Malaysian oil company Petronas. The plan is to inject the gas into large offshore gas fields once they are depleted. Why? Why are we doing this? How much carbon dioxide are you going to emit just getting it to Malaysia? Is it going to be on carbon neutral sales? It makes no sense to me. So will Japan be able to shore up its defenses while also engaging in this type of cockamamie, I guess we could call it, this type of luxury? You're going to buy the Maserati while you're preparing for bombs to land on your house. So that's kind of a strange thing. We'll return to some of these themes throughout the show today. This one is kind of focusing on energy, moving from shoring up your defenses for cyber and all that to more energy. So CO2 is an energy side effect. And this one comes to us from foreignaffairs.com. And it says, the other nuclear race. America is falling behind China and Russia on energy innovation. So in the supply chain war, a big part of it is energy. And with the G7, they love turning off their energy. For some reason, they're like, coal power plants, no, coal's dirty. We're going to turn it all off. We're going to blow up our nuclear power plants. We're just going to turn them all off and we're going to blow them up. Make sure the nuclear fuel is not there, by the way. So Germany turned off their nuclear power plants. Spain as well. Spain went full renewable and had a complete grid collapse like a week later. And they said it was unusual weather patterns, which makes it sound like some sort of electromagnetic pulse had entered the Earth's magnetosphere and caused disruptions with the power lines or something like that. But I think it was just there wasn't a lot of sun and the wind wasn't blowing. So the entire country was plummeted into darkness a week after going into this idea. So the idea that Japan can partner up with all of these nations to power the future while at the same time turning off all of the power is ridiculous. And I'm not going to read too much into this, but it's just kind of indicative of foolish trends within the supply chain wars. Because not all these people, I don't think they even know they're in a supply chain war. I think they're still like mid-90s. I'm going to put on a Greenpeace T-shirt and we're going to go to a music festival and someone there's going to have a solar power plant charging an iPad. Even though it's the mid-90s, you know, it's that frame of reference. And we see this music with a green T-shirt and somebody powering their device and going, the future is here. We can turn off our nuclear power plants now. The engineering required to power our society is rather complex. And these people boil it down to low-resolution madness and then aim with billions of dollars in backing to infect the rest of society with their poisonous ideologies. The world is witnessing a new kind of global race, not for authority in space, but for control over the global nuclear energy market. Nuclear power has long been considered risky, owing to major accidents and budget overruns, hampering its large-scale adoption. But within the past decade, nuclear energy has been making a comeback thanks to the development of small modular reactors. I've been hoping for these for more than a decade. When Fukushima happened, I was like, well, maybe that nuclear power plant's too big. I'd heard about small modular nuclear reactors and kind of thought, well, if we decentralize those and one of them blows up, we still have more of them. But then I learned that companies owned by Bill Gates are really into them as well. And he wants to have these powering the data centers for the AI. And I kind of go, that sounds like an ultimate monopoly, which he's known for commandeering. China and Russia are seizing the lead, expanding their domestic capacities, as well as exporting nuclear technology and constructing nuclear power plants across a variety of emerging economies. It goes on from there. I had the full article earlier, but it just kind of goes on to say that these countries, which had if you're in the mid-90s mentality, Russia is a collapsed state. China is basically a bunch of rural people struggling for survival. They haven't updated their firmware to understand where we are these days. Or it's like those people you talk to who you give them some information and they kind of go, oh, wow, that is pretty serious. But the next time you see them, they watched like a news program on TV and have completely forgotten about how all that was a lie. And it is a lie. What would be a good example of that? I don't mean to say something like 9/11 was an inside job, but we could also say like for example, like 4 or 5 years ago, hey, there's this Wuhan lab in Wuhan and they investigate viruses. If you said that, you'd be like, that is racist, and they said it's because of climate change. And so that's what we're doing. This is a virus because of climate change, and if you say the other thing, that means you're racist. And then a few years later, you'd be like, well, there's this virus lab there. And they'd be like, but it was climate change. So just that's a rough example, but you could have both things in your mind at the same time and entertain both of those ideas. Because we didn't know. Who would know? How would you possibly know? Did you go to Wuhan and do all the investigation? No, a bunch of people with conflicted interests did. Hey, that guy works for a private company actually promoting this idea, this theory. Doesn't matter. So they may even know that China's like the superpower and Russia has become like an energy provider for the world, but they forget or they don't incorporate it into their way of thinking. It's like a factoid that is its own just data point, isolated, twirling around in the nether regions of their mind, but you don't understand that these people now have very sophisticated ways of developing nuclear technology for the world, and they want to power the world with their supply chains. And we still think that we're in the mid-90s and we can go to music festivals with green T-shirts and see a solar panel and go, wow, the end. We've reached the end. But Toyota is on the up and up. And this one comes to us from hydrogeninsight.com. Toyota hydrogen boss warns that China will outpace rest of the world on H2 vehicle supply chains. So Toyota's actually betting very big on hydrogen. It maintained its position as a major producer of hybrid vehicles. And you talk to most people, and that's just the general population, a hybrid vehicle. It's gasoline, it's electric, it works very well. You diversify your energy needs in a sense, and it just works. People love them. They didn't go in on the EV. Tesla did because they have their own the additional technologies in addition to the EV that people would like to take advantage of, like full self-driving, a whole other range of things that you can use. So there's that. But hydrogen is the other one. So this one says, the president of Toyota's hydrogen business, Mitsumasa Yamagata, has warned that China could soon dominate supply chains for fuel cell vehicles, like it does for battery electric cars. And the country has already outpaced others on cutting H2 fuel costs. Of course, hydrogen is H2. In an interview with the Financial Times, Yamagata estimated that hydrogen fuel for transport in Japan costs 2,000 yen per kilogram, or about 13 or 14 bucks. Meanwhile, he puts the cost of H2 in China at 500 yen to 1,000 yen per kilo, although this includes byproduct H2, which he attributes to a greater level of government support for the sector. So China's classic example of subsidizing its promising industries. Quote, all stakeholders moving at once is the most important thing for bringing the cost of hydrogen down, Yamagata told the Financial Times. China is the most advanced country in the world for hydrogen trucks. Why they're that advanced is because the Chinese government ordered turning major logistics routes into hydrogen highways. So infrastructure, supply chains. You see how it all works here? Government funding it to do better than others. While sales of hydrogen-powered cars in most markets have dwindled, particularly in comparison to battery electric vehicles, which are cheaper to buy and operate, China has emerged as the largest market for H2 transport. Chinese government figures estimate that more than 24,000 fuel cell vehicles have been deployed by the end of 2024, with 540 refueling stations set up across the country. South Korean consultancy SNE Research tracked 7,113 hydrogen-powered vehicles sold in China last year, or more than the 5,753 sold in every other market combined. There are almost entirely commercial vehicles such as trucks, vans, buses, rather than passenger cars. Yamagata pushed back on the argument put forward by many analysts that batteries have already won over fuel cells for transport, arguing that the former added stress on power grids and the latter are more suitable for long-distance, heavy-duty trucking. Major thing that most people don't consider. How do you electrify all of your vehicles while at the same time turning off the electrification means that your country produces? Are you supposed to put a windmill on top of your car? What are these people thinking, right? So China is building the infrastructure. And I'm not saying that China is perfect, but they're actually doing it. Instead of saying that they're going to do it and then fund billions of dollars and then not do it. That's what the West is doing. Toyota is active in the Chinese market through 2 joint ventures with local companies to produce fuel cells, although Yamagata suggests this will ultimately improve the company's offering to its home and Western markets due to higher competition. By refining our products in China's tough market environment, we will release competitive products in Japan, Europe, and the U.S. afterwards, he said. Yeah, maybe. So that's just an idea here within the supply chain that, if instead of pursuing these luxury dreams of storing liquefied carbon in depleted Malaysian gas fields, if we instead took that resource and that income, that manpower, woman power, human power, and applied it to R&D of hydrogen within the country, even though they're already doing it, but you take that extra chunk of change and whack a people, and you push them into something with a future that makes sense, would it be more competitive? Because you can't just compete in China and then extract from China and bring it to the rest of the world. Or can you? Is that the luxury? I don't know. But it just seems that likely what's going to happen is how do they protect their IP in China? China's notorious for just stealing a company's IP, subsidizing a new company with that IP, kicking the previous company out, and bada bing, bada boom, you have all of your IP stolen. But now you can release competitive products back home. I don't know. Is that the plan? Maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the new business model. Do business in China until the Chinese government thinks you're good enough that it steals from you. And that's the threshold that's been met, meaning that your product is now competitive back home. Couple of other things here. Now, with the South China Sea, there's like these other dichotomies going on. And it says, China urges Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN countries to deepen cooperation amid trade war turbulence. So with the U.S. administration and Trump saying tariff, a lot of countries are going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And China's trying to take advantage of that uncertainty by saying, why don't we do business together? We're very reliable people. But are they, Because as China develops its infrastructure at home, it's also able to expand internationally. So just because Toyota makes some interesting car products inside of China and then exports it around the world, well, what if China gets there quicker? Maybe not better, but just quicker. First one past the post maybe wins. China auto parts makers triple in Thailand on EV battery push. I thought China's economy was failing. Chinese auto parts manufacturers in Thailand have grown threefold with the arrival of BYD and other car companies, turning the Southeast Asian nation into a base that could be used to supply other Asian markets. In Thailand's Eastern Economic Corridor, located about 2 hours by car from Bangkok, new factories are going up along the main road. And it ends there because it's part of a paywall. So China has that idea too. Now, with the idea of trade, okay, we're trading with each other. And this is going into Malaysia. This is going into Thailand. What do these things have in common? The South China Sea. So if we have this supply chain war with the supply chain routes and China's trying to take over the South China Sea, and it may have already, how does Japan effectively interact with all of its export, nations or nations where Japan companies have established economic beachheads or factories or, partnerships? If China takes over that chunk of sea and it doesn't allow other people to go through without paying a fee, how does that affect the supply chain wars? So Manila, which is the Philippines, Beijing, swap accusations over South China Sea incident. This happened just recently. I'm recording this on May 9th. This happened 17 hours ago. According to NHK, the Philippines says Chinese naval ships have conducted what it calls aggressive and unsafe movements in disputed waters in the South China Sea. Beijing rejected the claim. The Philippine military says the incident occurred earlier this week when its patrol ship encountered two Chinese frigates near the Scarborough Shoal, claimed by Philippines, but increasingly edged in on by China. Philippine military footage showed one of the Chinese vessels sailing alongside the patrol ship while the other crossed in front of its path. So there's this idea. And then there's also this other idea that China has taken over another shoal in the South China Sea that's technically administered by the Philippines. They planted their flag on it. The Philippines also went to that shoal, planted their flag on it. So now we have flag wars in the South China Sea. So can it be this reliable thing? It's like, well, okay, so Toyota's going to do this hydrogen thing in China, and it's going to be great. We're going to bring it out and expand it to everybody. But then China is also like, no, we're going to take over the South China Sea. We're going to really move in there and take it over. Is that how do you balance those two things with each other? Because they're not isolated from each other at all. Another way that it's kind of this disruption is going on is within the BRICS themselves. And I don't think India has a long-term stay or influence in the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, India, China, and plus other countries. I think India might even pull out eventually because India is going its own way. And BRICS was established in the late 2000s. Now it's kind of a different scenario. So maybe they will stay in as like this kind of a de facto member, but I'm not sure if really India and BRICS is the way to go. Now, a lot of companies are trying to get out of China and do friend shoring or reshoring, but it's not as though China's just going to let it go. So this is indicative of, I like that word indicative, don't I? This is just indicative of how you can go in, but can you come out? Apple's trying to build more iPhones in India, but China isn't cooperating, report. This comes to us from 9to5mac.com. I love the ads that just pop up, don't you? Apple aims to move half of iPhone production out of China, but it's facing pushback. There's no doubt that Apple's dependence on China for product assembly has become a liability for the company. What was once seen as a strength for Apple in the midst of an ongoing U.S.-China trade war is currently a major vulnerability in Wall Street's eyes. According to The Information, Apple has been making moves to try reducing its dependence on China, But as has been reported previously, Chinese authorities aren't making that very easy. Wayne Ma writes at The Information, earlier this year, Chinese authorities refused to allow one of Apple's Chinese equipment suppliers to export machinery to India that Apple needed for the upcoming iPhone 17's trial production, according to two people with direct knowledge of the matter. So the supplier got creative. It set up a front company in Southeast Asia to buy the machines. Once the equipment reached the Southeast Asian country, it went to a factory in India operated by Foxconn, the Taiwanese company that builds most of Apple's iPhones in China, the people said. In many cases, Chinese authorities are delaying or blocking shipments of iPhone equipment to India without explanation, according to multiple people involved in the iPhone production. Foxconn has seen approval times from Chinese authorities for exporting iPhone-making equipment from its China factories to those in India rise from 2 weeks to as long as 4 months, one of the people said. They are also rejecting some export applications without explanation, the person added. Yeah, so they're just going to muddy the waters. They're just going to lose the papers. They're just going to close the doors. They're just going to muddy the supply chain routes. So, yeah, you can get in, but can you get out? That's what that's about. So is it safe? I mean, if it's happening to India, could it happen to Toyota? I don't know. Do they know? Or are they just kind of do? And the last one in the supply chain war is a North Korean one. And this one is the North Koreans in this scenario are kind of like bandits. These are, if you're driving through Africa, for example, and you're driving from point A to point B, and there's a war in point A and there's a war in point B, but point B has not as war-y as point A, and you're driving with all your money and your stuff down the African highways. And you turn a corner and there's like a tree that's been chopped down, put in front of the road, and a bunch of shirtless Africans in sandals jump from up behind a mound with a bunch of AK-47s and machetes, and they storm your vehicle and take what they can from you. That's kind of what like the North Koreans are doing. So amid all of this high-level, sophisticated intergovernmental operations of, hey, we're your friends, but at the same time, here's a knife right in your back. The North Koreans are just trying to take advantage of the chaos, it seems. Now, they have these things called crypto spies in North Korea, and they've been trying to get a hold of Japanese ID and pose as online engineers with fake Japanese ID, and then they get paid and they can give that money back to North Korea, or they can use it for, crypto laundering or something like that. By the way, there are a lot of North Koreans that live in Japan as North Koreans. So there is a hub of North Koreans in Japan. Who knows if they're helping them or not? My estimation would be on the side of more likely perhaps than not. A North Korean crypto spy revealed more than he should have in a dummy interview set up as part of a sting operation. For months, Cointelegraph took part in an investigation centered around a suspected North Korean operative that uncovered a cluster of threat actors attempting to score freelancing gigs in the cryptocurrency industry. The investigation was led by Heiner Garcia, a cyber threat intelligence expert at Telefonica and a blockchain security researcher. Garcia uncovered how North Korean operatives secured freelance work online even without using a VPN. Garcia first encountered this guy who's quote-unquote called Motoki on GitHub in late January while investigating a cluster linked to a suspected Democratic People's Republic of Korea threat actor known as Best Selection 18. They have the best names, don't they? This account is widely believed to be operated by an experienced DPRK IT infiltrator. It was part of a broader group of suspected operatives who had infiltrated the crypto gig economy through freelancing platforms such as OnlyDust. Most North Korean state actors, don't use a human face photo for their accounts, so Motoki's profile, which had ones, hooked Garcia's attention. I went straight to the point and just wrote to him on Telegram. It was pretty easy. I didn't even say the company's name. What's this? During the introduction, we asked Motoki to introduce himself in Japanese. The screen light reflecting off his face suggested he was frantically searching through tabs and windows to find a script to help him answer. There was a long, tense silence. Jiko shokai o onagai shimasu, COINTEL repeated into the request, this time in Japanese. Motoki frowned, threw off his headset, and left the interview. So basically, the point here is if you don't do face-to-face interviews, there's enough legitimacy in pirated documents that would lead you to believe you're working with somebody when you're totally not. You're working with somebody else entirely. So just by having a little human face-to-face interaction, you can prevent a lot of these, chaos monkeys from taking advantage of supply chain disruption and ruining the reputation of your own country while bolstering the pockets of their hacker groups. It's kind of a loose end to tie it on, I will admit, but I just thought it was interesting that amidst all of this chaos, it also opens up avenues for other actors to come in and make a pretty penny off of the disruption. But as soon as you just kind of talk to somebody face to face, it's revelatory that, oh, this person's a scammer. Don't use them. So maybe that's what we need for the supply chain wars. More face-to-face communication. Die for the war. Everybody moves. Die for the good. Die for the war. Die for the war. More nuggets of truth on the Japan Web Podcast. Times are hard. And, maybe we just need more in this internet age. We need more face-to-face communication.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society.
Whoa.
Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom.
No way.
Society 5.0. A technology-based, human-centered society. The fourth industrial revolution will raise our standard of living and solve various challenges we face.
Oh, I didn't mean to adopt it so abruptly there.
The fourth industrial
I like to fade
revolution
out.
will enable...
So that, of course, is the Japanese government's Japan Society 5.0 promotional thingamabob, promoting the Japan Society 5.0, the next level of society. It's been decided, so we're going to build it anyways. And we're going to build the future now. Of course, Society 1.0 is us running around in caves. We're in about Society 4.3 or 4.5 right now, and we're edging up to Society 5.0. A couple of things that exist outside of Japan but will affect Japan. A lot of the AI coming into Japan is produced outside of Japan, and Japan imports it, localizes it, and then finds a way to either sell it, repackage it, use it for governmental applications, and this, that, and the other thing. But one thing that I found was the CEO of Fiverr. Do you know what Fiverr is? Fiverr is basically like a portal for gig work. I think the idea is like you want to pay somebody $5 to do something, but you don't want to go to a professional, so you get an amateur to do it anyways. And it's not always $5. It could be 1,000 yen or 2,000 yen or 10 or $20 or whatever the agreement is. But the idea is that you're a freelancer and you put your portfolio up on Fiverr, and people contact you and offer you money, and then you boom, get paid. So this Fiverr guy, I think that's what his name, Misha Kaufman. You know what? I usually verify this stuff. Yes, CEO of Fiverr, Five or R. Okay, good. Because sometimes you read something and it's somebody saying, look, it's the CEO of Fiverr. But it's like not, but you think it is because it makes sense that it would be. You didn't talk to him face to face, and now you're just talking to a North Korean. Anyways, on the issue of AI, he says, Hey team, I've always believed in radical candor and despised those who sugarcoat reality to avoid stating the unpleasant truth. The very basis for radical candor is care. Sounds like a CEO, doesn't he? You care enough about your friends and colleagues to tell them the truth because you want them to be able to understand it, grow, and succeed. So here's the unpleasant truth. AI is coming for your jobs. Heck, it's coming for my job too. This is a wake-up call. It does not matter if you are a programmer, designer, product manager, data scientist, lawyer, customer support rep, salesperson, or a finance person. AI is coming for you. You must understand that what once was considered easy tasks will no longer exist. What was once considered hard tasks will be the new easy, and what was considered impossible tasks will be the new hard. If you do not become an exceptional talent at what you do, a master, you will face the need for a career change in a matter of months. I am not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to talk about your job at Fiverr. I am talking about your ability to stay in your profession in the industry. If you look at a picture of Mark Kaufman, you will read the way I was reading just now. Interesting. Seems like he's followed up, but I'm not going to get into that. I could have read it like, you must understand that what was once considered easy tasks will no longer exist. What was considered hard tasks will be the new easy, and what was considered impossible tasks will be the new hard. If you do not become an exceptional talent at what you do, a master, you will face the need for a career change in a matter of months. I am not trying to scare you. I am not talking about your job at Fiverr. I am talking about your ability to stay in your profession in the industry. So he's coming out and saying it. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I used to say there's two sides of the crazy AI coin. One of them is that AI is going to become your friend, take your job, screw your wife, and then kill you. It's not going to screw your wife or kill you just yet, or become your friend, but it looks like it's taking the jobs. That part I'm conceding. Then the other side of the AI crazy coin was, what is artificial intelligence even mean? I mean, why call it AI? Meanwhile, as you can see in China, shut up about that question, but just call it AI and get it over with. And now implement it as many places as you can to make our efficiencies improve. Stop debating about the terminology. Why do we call it a computer? It does more than just compute. It sounds more like a calculator if I say computer. Why do we call it a computer? So there's all these things that go on. So Fiverr, the CEO of Fiverr is saying that. And also, now I'm not really into futurists because it does get into that crazy voice. But just to kind of keep pace with the two sides of the crazy coin, like with Japan going all in on building up undersea cables and bolstering defense and putting things on special lists and stuff like that, while at the same time liquefying CO2 and shipping it to the empty gas fields of Malaysia. Woo! Ray Kurzweil, a notorious futurist, also had some comments about what he thinks the future is. And one of the reasons I like to focus on these people from time to time is just to kind of say, it makes sense for us to have systems in place that have AI looking at water currents. And if you have aquaculture in there and the current is moving too quickly, don't feed them yet. But if the temperature is right and the current is slow, that's when you would have an automatic food releaser for your oysters or something like that. It would send it all in a data package back to your computer at home, and you could monitor it from the comfort of your seaside patio, and you wouldn't have to get on boats and hope for the best. That type of thing just makes sense to me when we apply it to the world around us. But a lot of people, including the Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist and the next Googler, they have other ideas for us, and they're very ungood, I would say. And it's important to understand what they want, because it's this future of utilizing this technology like a backhoe. Just, hey, we don't have to use our 50 people to make this trench anymore. We just get this backhoe in here and it's done in a matter of hours. Like getting it all made and all together is an entire thing, and all the gasoline it needs, blah, blah, blah. But that's something to look up to. But nobody would say like, we're going to remove your arms and surgically attach backhoes to your arms and turn you into this backhoe superhuman. But a lot of these futurists view general people as that type of resource. And I wonder if Ray Kurzweil does as well. Here we go.
We'll be able to actually tell what's going on in our neocortex. You don't have to interface with the entire neocortex. The neocortex is like a pyramid. And at the very top, you've got the key ideas. That's where you need to connect to. You don't need to, right now you can do that with surgery, but you'll be able to do that without surgery by sending things that can sense the neocortex through the bloodstream. There's experiments of that, but that'll happen in the 2030s. So we'll actually merge with it. We won't actually carry all the AI with us. It'll go to the nearest cloud. This is actually not that intelligent unless it interfaced with the cloud.
The phone.
And that's where it gets all of its intelligence. And cloud can be actually very secure. We use encryption that's virtually unbreakable. So your thoughts will actually go to the cloud. There'll be AI there. It will be as if it's in your mind. But you'll be connecting to it through the cloud. And the cloud will be much more sophisticated than it is today. It's not going to go down as much and so forth.
Basically what he's saying is like he wants all of us to be injected with nanobots that disseminate our brain waves, interpret them, and send them into the cloud. So that we're constantly, it's an internal spiritual surveillance network. And we don't need leather tethers or chains around our ankles. The cloud will administer us via AI nanobots injected into our bloodstream. That's what he wants. So that's another side of the crazy coin. That's not a future I like. Do you? Do you just want these people injecting us with AI nanobots so that they can control us via the cloud, or that we can order an Uber with our thoughts? I don't know. I don't know about that. Isn't that nuts? So the CEO of Fiverr, even though I was talking like this, he actually has more of a realistic view of it. But these other people, they have weird ideas, especially for people, like what they want people to be in the future. They think that they have a right to tell us how the future of humanity needs to go. And if we disagree with them, then, well, they have something in store for us, maybe. Us, meaning, well, I think most people who listen to this podcast are not into fusion of human computers connected by the cloud, unless you're severely disabled. But even then, I think some people would rather just live with their disabilities. You don't necessarily need to have if you're in a wheelchair, if you're a wheelchair user, you might just choose to get around in a wheelchair rather than transplant your consciousness to a series of CCTV cameras and exist vicariously through monitoring networks. You might do it sometimes, but overall, you also might like to get some fresh air, push the wheels, something like that. Another issue here that Japan is facing with its silliness, this comes to us from the University of Tokyo, which is Japan's Harvard, essentially. It's Japan's top university. But in terms of global rankings, Japan ranks 124th in the top 124 for AI education. And this 124th university is the University of Tokyo. And they as well have gone pretty woke. A lot of people say Japan's based. Japan's not going to go this migrant route. Japan's based. Well, I tell you, it used to be. But for the past 10 years or so, these multi-culti, kumbaya tropes have been percolating around these privileged areas. And I see interviews with the University of Tokyo crowd, and these are the people that go on to become managers at telecommunications companies. I've taught them. They're very intelligent, like shockingly intelligent. Like, oh, wow. Like, oh, I know smart people, but then you're a smart person. Oh, I see. And they're not usually that interesting, but just they can look at 12 different data points and say, that's the one we need to go for. And you're like, what? And they're like, yeah, see? And it takes like them 5 hours to explain it to you. And you're like, I guess so. Let's just do it and see what happens. And of course, they're right. And they're like, see, look, $100 million just came in. You're like, what? How did that happen? They can't explain it because they're too smart. But this is what they're kind of being taught at the University of Tokyo now, or Tokyo University, or Todai as it's called. This is just from their events page. A session on creating the future through AI, entrepreneurship, and globalization with Google is translated. So, and this says, the co-creation of the frontiers of knowledge and innovation, a session on creating the future that combines AI, entrepreneurship, and globalization with Google, co-hosted by the University of Tokyo Foundation and the University Tokyo Founders Association. And it says the program will have opening remarks. They will have a talk session theme called Toward the Social Implementation of AI, a future co-created by the University of Tokyo, Google, and entrepreneurs. Who can make it globally? A pitch contest by startups from the University of Tokyo. It all makes sense. And then it says, towards an era in which women can play an active role as entrepreneurs. And then special project AI Rakugo. So that's what I mean. It's like there's towards an era in which women can play an active role as entrepreneurs. I can see if you are a very traditional institute in like northern Japan, and it's been like a male club for generations, I can see it getting pretty hard for a woman to get into the upper echelons and lead the country as a CEO. Fine. But to be an entrepreneur, you just be an entrepreneur. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. So why do we have to have, why is there this way of thinking that we need to think of being towards an era, meaning we're not there yet, meaning women are not active, do not play active roles as entrepreneurs. That's what it's saying. So it's training, like a victim mentality training. Women do not have an active role as entrepreneurs, but we can in the future if we talk about it endlessly. So this is more of that luxury that we have. Instead of just saying, here are some women entrepreneurs, this is what they did well, this is what they didn't do well. Or even, here's some male entrepreneurs, here's what you can do well and here's what you can't do well. Because it doesn't matter if you're a male or a female entrepreneur. You're just an entrepreneur. It's like saying, how can we get more female cyclists on the road? Well, you just learn how to ride a bike and you go. So even these really smart people at the smartest place in Japan, a large part of what they're doing is, not all of it, and I'm not saying it's just like woke madness all the time and it's liberal hell and the conservatives need to get in there. I'm not really a conservative person. But this type of victim training is something that I view as waste of time, waste of money, and it puts into people's heads that they're not that thing and that that society is preventing them from being that thing and that they have to fight society in order to become that thing. Well, you have to fight to become something. So you need to have your eyes on the prize and fight to become that, but you can't fight the society and then become that thing. I think that's a very poisonous attitude, and it's quite common at the University of Tokyo. The last one we're going to do for today is a very interesting one. I'm saving it's the best for last, but that also means it's entirely bizarre. A couple of weeks ago, I was focusing on like the future of AI hospitals, and it's your face will have a code that will store your medical information on it, and the hospital will be like a network of cameras and medicine equipment, and you basically just go into a booth and it will scan your face and it will know what your medical history is, and it can compare it to a database of people that have the same or slightly different medical histories as you, and learn how to combine the medications best for you. Whether it works or not, it doesn't matter. But this is like this future use case of Japan Society 5.0. Like when we first got the smartphone, nobody thought that we'd be scrolling women's asses on Instagram 30 hours a week. People do that. People thought it would be like a music and a web browser and a phone, but people don't talk on it anymore. So when we have these new waves come in, the way that they will be used in the future is totally insane. And with these AI applications, wireless algorithms hooked up to facial recognition cameras and medical analysis equipment, who knows what that means in the future? It probably doesn't mean you need 80 people walking around a hospital. So then the hospital reverts itself or redefines itself as an unmanned hospital. These types of things. And Sakana.ai is similar to that, where you look at it and you kind of go, that's a future thing that's not just using my face to unlock a door, or that's not just using my fingerprint to scan my bank account or something like that, which is, it's not that much of a stretch. So this says Sakana AI wins award at U.S. competition for defense innovation. So it had two themes. And the first one is called Detecting and Diagnosing Biological Threats for Biodefense. This is from the Sakana AI blog, and this is kind of skipping down to kind of the middle of the article because it's blowing smoke up its own ass for being so awesome and winning all this stuff, which is fine. But this is kind of skipping to the technical part. In our solution for the biodefense theme, we proposed a comprehensive set of solutions for the detection and diagnosis of biological threats using frontier AI models and AI agents. In addition to using our time series-based foundation model to predict infectious disease outbreaks, we also proposed solutions that combines an agent-based model that predicts human behavior with generative AI to accurately predict infectious disease outbreaks, identify options for countermeasures to curb the spread of infection and their impact assessment, and help identify the origin of an outbreak. So what that does is it creates a digital twin. It takes all of the people existing on a map and it starts doing prediction routes. Now, what if it's predicted that a new biological threat is very threatening, so we all have to stop? But it's not threatening. It's just been predicted as threatening. Will this company be able to stop people from moving around? How do they know that the human behavior it's predicting with generative AI will match what's happening on the ground level? So this is kind of what I mean by insane things of the future, where you read it and it's like it's happening, but it's foggy at the same time. They kind of know what they're doing, but it hasn't filtered down to the daily use case yet. So they want to use our time series based foundation model to predict infectious disease outbreaks. Solutions that combine agent-based model and predicts human behavior with generative AI to accurately predict infectious disease outbreaks, identify options for countermeasures to curb the spread of infection and their impact assessment, and help identify the origin of the outbreak. Pretty insane stuff. They also want to accelerate the defense innovation for Japan. Japan, being one of the most advanced and culturally significant countries in the world, is facing many crucial challenges this century. These challenges include facing a declining population, decreased competitiveness, and increasing geopolitical tensions. As the leading democracy in Asia, Japan also hopes to face the challenge of strengthening its defense infrastructure and capability. While AI alone will certainly not solve all of Japan's problems, we believe AI can help. Sakana AI aims to produce AI innovations that can help Japan cope with challenges that it will face for decades to come. We believe that this challenge is the first step for Sakana AI to help accelerate defense innovation in Japan. So it's interesting to see what they're doing. But I can kind of see using this for sports and whatnot. or using it for highway traffic analysis, things that have some variability but not a lot of variability. But in the case of an outbreak, if you remember COVID-19, did you predict that it would go on that long? Did you predict that there'd be a trucker protest in Canada? Did you predict that doctors live streaming their dissenting information would be arrested at gunpoint in Germany? Did you predict any of that stuff? So how is it possible for it? Does it just want to predict things to stop anything from happening? So it just basically grabs society by the throat and tells it to stop until it lets go. And it says, look, nothing happened. We are successful. That's the kind of worry that I have with this technology, is that how do you predict something as chaotic as an outbreak? Now, a major part of public health is surveillance. There's two aspects of public health: keeping people healthy, but also where are they going? What are they doing? What are they drinking? How much are they drinking of it? Is that what's affecting them? Why do these people have pusses in their foreheads? Where did that come from? Where do we get that information? Where do we track it back to? So this would be a type of pre-crime, in a way, predicting where criminals are going to go and then going there and stopping the criminals. What's the threshold for capability? What's the threshold for identifying positives versus false positives or false negatives? All these things, we don't know. But the government and these companies are going full tilt towards this future because some of them want to get to it before others can. There's also going to be a hell of a lot of money to be made in these fields. And maybe in the future, it would be a good thing to have this stuff. Oh, good thing we had this AI predicting where people would go so we could get the medicine to those places earlier, so we didn't misdeliver the medicine. Maybe something like that. Or maybe it's like I said, we're just going to choke society for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Who knows what's going to go on? Anyways, that's going to be Japan Society 5.0 for today.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society. Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom. Society 5.0, a technology-based, human-centered society. The fourth industrial revolution will raise our standard of living.
All right. Well, I'm going to play a song based on today's podcast. I didn't cover everything that's in the song because I get the song ready before I do the podcast. But Suno has released version 4.5, and it's gotten a lot better in my opinion. So let's take a listen to the summary of today's podcast via song created by Grok with Sonnets, the headlines from today's show, and an updated model from Suno.
KDDI joins in chief forces, jobs claimed by code. OpenAI helps nations shape AI forms. Google sparks talks on futures, carve by tech. Second that AI triumphs in defense. Real estate trains youth with AI coaches. Half Japan's firms bypass AI hires. CTC targets billions via AI deals. Cameras guide roads to ease guard deficits. Dragon Ball Studio funds AI streamlining. Mountains reveal relics to AI's key side. It's not in the future, it's happening now on the Japan What podcast. Sales staff grow under synthetic tutors. Minds and machines entwine in quiet bond. Beijing calls Japan to strengthen bonds. Manila clashes with China over Shine. Dreams are on nuclear might. Japan builds now to shape a future bright. On the Japan what? On the Japan What podcast.
All right, and that's the song. I quite like it. There is a kind of a few moments where the lyrics were almost talking over each other, but I kind of play it just to see what the state of the art of AI this and AI that and AI of the other thing is at. But anyways, that's pretty sophisticated that you just plug that in and it makes it. So there's that. But the stereo imaging and like the sound of the snares and the ride cymbals and the realism of the voice is getting much better, I find. Anyways, that's going to be the podcast for today. Make sure to go to MatthewPMBigelow.com to get all your podcast needs there for the Japan What podcast and make a donation at paypal.me/JapanWUT. That's paypal.me/JapanWUT. Till next time, everybody, I bid thee a warmful and joyful, not to mention a heartful, Ja Mata